Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at Helft mir Gottes Güte preisen, which translates to help me to praise God's goodness. We actually looked at this chorale, or this melody, recently when we looked at BWV 16, used the exact same melody, so I'm interested to see the differences between this harmonization and that harmonization. It has been a couple of days, actually almost 2 weeks. I don't remember it super well, but I'll go back and review for my own edification. But that being said, we'll just hop right into the analysis. This is a pretty straightforward chorale anyways. So first thing we have going on is no key signature. We start on A minor, we end on A major, so I reckon we're in the key of A minor to start things off. But coincidentally, something that's been kind of a theme in the chorales of recent, or at least many of the chorales of recent, is that we get a very quick modulation. Our first cadence is what I'm calling an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of G major. So we're looking for a modulation point somewhere in and around the second half of the first complete measure. So we start off with A minor, our tonic triad. We get another A minor on beat 1 of the first complete measure. We then have G sharp, B, E, and B, which is an E major triad in first inversion. So that's a 5-6 chord. We then have A minor, again, A, E, and C in root position. And I reckon this is where we're going to modulate, because we get F sharp on the next beat, and then we get G natural following it, so that leading tone tonic movement is indicative of the fact that one of two things is happening. Either we've tonicized G, or we are seeing some sort of modal influence here, like a Dorian, which I don't hear, so I think we're moving to the key of G. And we can go ahead and just call this 2. And this actually makes sense because the next chord we get is D major, D, F sharp, A, and D. So it's D major over F sharp, that's 5-6. And then we have G major, G, G, D, and B. So 2-5-1 in the key of G major. And then we get some counterpoint going on in the inner voices, neighbor tone, kind of a reiteration of G here, except for we remove the fifth of the chord here and opt to triple the root. And the reason why I call this an imperfect authentic cadence is not only because of the fact that we have the fifth of the chord in the melody, but also because of the fact that we kind of have like a hidden dominant happening here. Really, with this G pedal, we have an implied F sharp diminished chord. We don't have a C, we have a G, so we kind of have the idea of 7 going on here, the leading tone going here, and the C going up to D. It's really not the strongest cadence before we return back to our tonic triad. So yeah, as far as authentic cadences are concerned, this is very, very, very weak. Maybe there's even a better term to refer to this cadence as, just because of the fact that we don't really get an implied dominant as opposed to a very clear dominant on a downbeat like we would expect in an authentic cadence. But that being said, we immediately follow with this augmented octave leap in the bass, which is really interesting. I don't think there's really a smooth transition between the A minor that we get after this, or the key of A minor we get after this G. It's just abrupt. Therefore, I think this is a direct modulation, and we'll just mark it as if we were just starting a new phrase in the key of A minor. And we're starting off with E major over G sharp. That's a 5-6 chord. That goes to A minor, A, E, and C, with some passing tones in the lower voices. We then have F, C, A, and A. That's an F major triad in root position, which is 6. Passing 7th in the bass. This is also a passing 7th, by the way. We then have D, F, A, and B. That's a B minor 7 flat 5 over D. So it's a 2-6-5 chord. You know that Bach loves his 2-6-5 chords. We then have E, E, G sharp, and B. That's an E major triad in root position this time. I think it's the first root position 5 chord we've seen. with a passing seventh in the tenor, and then we cadence on A minor. Perfect authentic cadence. Okay, moving ahead, we have a half cadence in the key of A minor, so no need to modulate or look for any modulation points. We're still staying in the same key. We have another A minor triad on this beat right here. We then have B, D, G sharp, and B. Depending on how you look at it, I'm saying that G sharp is the chord tone here. However, you might say that A is the chord tone here, and if A is the chord tone here, you see B, D, A, and D, which might imply a 2 chord, 2-7 to be more specific, but I hear this as a 7 chord in first inversion, G sharp, B, D, and D, and that goes to A minor in first inversion, C, E, A, and C. Good. So we have D, F, A, and B. That's another B minor 7 flat 5 in first inversion, so 2, 6, 5. We have some non-chord tones on the next and. We have E, E, G sharp. Remember the G sharp carries over, and B, so 2, 6, 5 going where we expect it to. But we get a bit of a deceptive progression, and depending on how you look at it, you might see one of two things. The first thing you might see is an F major 7 chord, which is 6, 7. However, I hear this as F, D, A, and A, which is a 4-6 chord, and the reason why I think 4-6 is more likely analysis for this cadence is because of the fact that this is a half cadence, and a 4-6 chord preceding a 5 chord is somewhat conventional. We call it a Phrygian half cadence because of the half step movement from the third of the 4 chord down to the root of the 5 chord, and that half step is a hallmark of the Phrygian mode. It's the only mode that really gets used in early music that has that half step. Of course, there's the Locrian mode, but that's a mode of a diminished triad, so it's not really tonicizable. So yeah, I think it's more likely that this is a 4-6 chord, but granted, really what matters is that the 6 is going down to the 5, so maybe Bach was implying a 6-7 chord here. Really, it's the bass movement that implies that, the outward movement in the outer voices, but more specifically just the downward half-step motion in the bass is what's important. Okay, we have another E major chord here, but this cadence that we have here, I hear it as a half cadence in the key of C major. However, you might hear this as an authentic cadence in the key of G major, and I will analyze it both ways. So we have an E major chord, that's still 5, we don't need to reanalyze, but that goes to A minor, right here. And we've used A minor to modulate in the past, but I think this time we're moving to the key of C major, it's just what it sounds like to me. So this A minor is now 6 in root position. We then have B, D, G, and D. That's a G major triad in first inversion, so that would be 5-6. We've been seeing a lot of 5-6 chords in this chorale so far. And that goes to C major, C, C, G, and E. And that's our tonic triad, with some passing tones in the lower voices. We're seeing something similar actually to the second phrase a little bit here, where we see this same sort of idea of passing tones in the lower voices going in different directions after a 5 chord, like so. So there's a little bit of mirroring going on formula-wise. Then we have A, C, E, and C. That is a 6 chord in root position. But remember, it's minor because we're in a major key, so our 6 chord is always minor. Passing 7th in the bass. Both of these are passing 7ths. It's exactly this progression right here, just in the key of C major. But we're thrown for a loop a little bit because of the fact that this is a half cadence, as opposed to preparing for a perfect authentic cadence. So we have F sharp, A, and D. So I think this E actually is a non-chord tone. Usually we get the chord tone on the beat after. I'd say the majority of the time. Even if it's only like 60% of the time, it's still the majority of the time. But this is a D major chord over F sharp, which is 5-6 of 5. So even the secondary dominants are in first inversion. And then we get D, D, G, and D. but really that G is a non-chord tone, and we're looking at this F sharp and this C here, which both imply a 7 chord. So really this chord here is just turning into root position and adding the 7th before we cadence on 5, our dominant. If you did hear this as a cadence in the key of G major, you can call this A minor chord 2. You can call this D major chord over F sharp 5, 6, and the figure bass chain stays the same, and then we cadence on 1. And that would be an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of G. However, I hear it as a half cadence because of the melody being the way that it is. It's one of those half cadences. I talk about this all the time in my videos. Half cadences and authentic cadences in the key of the dominant, they achieve the same thing. It's just deciding whether or not to call it a modulation. It requires context, and I don't think there's enough context present. The melody doesn't really agree enough with the bass and the rest of the harmony to fully move into the key. It just sounds like the dominance being tonicized at the cadence, which in and of itself does blur the lines a bit. However, however you hear it, I think so long as you're consistent with your analysis, that's what matters. And I'm offering both viewpoints, so that's I think that's what's most important. So afterwards we get F, D, G, and B, which is just taking the 5 chord before and lowering the bass by a step, turning it into the third inversion, so 4-2, and we would expect a 4-2 chord to go to a 1-6 chord, E, G, G, and C. A first inversion tonic triad. Then we have D, A, F natural, and D. However, you might be tempted to call this a 2 chord, and I'll offer that analysis, but I think it's the B here that's actually implying B diminished over D, which is 7-6. We then have C, C, E, and E, which is interesting. It's a fifthless tonic triad with doubled thirds. We do see them from time to time, actually, but they're far less common than a complete triad or a triad with 3 roots. Then we have B, E, A, and C. This B being an accented non-chord tone, kind of like a, what would that be? B under E would be like a 4-5 suspension, or B under C would be like a 9-10 suspension going on in the bass, depending on how you look at it. I think it's just an accented non-chord tone because it happens over such a short period of time. So this is just a 6 chord. We see a lot of 1 going to 6, whether it be in the minor key or whether it be in a major key. We see a lot of 1 going to 6 in this chorale. And then we're getting ready for another, what I hear as a half cadence in the key of C major. Let's see how it pans out. So we have B, D, A, and D. This A being an accented non-chord tone. And here we have a little bit of a confusing situation. So we would expect this A to resolve down to G. So I think 5 is what's being implied here. But look at this C. This C interrupts the resolution, and it creates a consonant interval. It's 7 going to a 5th. It would be a 7-6 suspension, but he goes up by step in the bass as well. So we never get a fully realized G major chord, even though I think that's what's being implied here. This C in the bass just keeps us from fully realizing the chord. But yeah, that doesn't change the fact that I think G is still being implied. It's just kind of an interesting scenario. And this happens from time to time in Bach's music where he'll interrupt a pretty logical resolution with with movement in another voice that doesn't allow the chord to fully realize. And that's more just a byproduct of the counterpoint. But he's connecting this B to this D right here, and we know that that D implies D major, which is 5 of 5, with a couple of non-chord tones in the upper voices. Interestingly enough, this delayed 7th doesn't really fully make its impact because we get a 9th, or not a 9th. Yeah, no, it would be a 9th. E is the 9th of D. So again, we kind of have like this, not parallelism by any means, but the suspensions or the delayed after the fact notes being interrupted by a lower voice. It's kind of interesting. And then of course we cadence on 5 in root position. If you heard this in the key of G major, which I think this one sounds less like the key of G major than the previous, but I'll go ahead and offer the analysis. We have 2, which is A minor. 1 going to 2 is kind of a unusual progression, but we see it from time to time. And then we have, this is also 5-6. I'm glad that I caught that. B, D, A, and D, but this G is our topic of discussion, our chord tone. Then D major is just 5, and then G major in root position is just our tonic. And similarly to how we had a cadence in the key of G major here, that directly modulated back to the key of A minor, which we have a similar situation going on here. I think this is a direct modulation because there's really no elegant way to suggest that E major is implying G major. I think after the phrase, Bach is thinking in a new idea. We have this augmented octave leap as well, so there's definitely some parallelism between phrase 1 and phrase 2 and phrase 4 and phrase 5 and phrase 6. So we go immediately back to the key of A minor. E major over G sharp is a 5-6 chord. We then go to 1, A minor in root position. We have some passing tones going on in these voices. Actually a little bit of a minor 5 going on, as you can see, G, B, E, and B, but I don't really think that contributes too much to the progression. We have F, A, and A. Apologies, F, C, A, and A. I made that exact same example or mistake right here. So these two phrases are very similar to one another, if not nearly identical. Both of these are passing sevenths, kind of like how I made I missed that observation with these two the first time around. We then have D, F, A, and B. That's a B minor 7 flat 5 over D, so 2-6-5. We know that Bach loves his 2-6-5 chords. E major in root position, E, G sharp, and B, passing seventh in the tenor, and then we cadence on A major, A, C sharp, E, and A. Perfect authentic cadence with the Picardy third, as Bach most often does with his minor chorales. So that's today's analysis. All in all, I always think it's very interesting when Bach modulates to the 7 of the scale. In minor keys, he'll often do that. Actually, I should be a little bit more cautious when I say often. I think he does it enough for it to be conventional and something that is a logical deduction. Like if you were saying, all right, we're in the key of A minor and we weren't looking ahead to at the rest of the piece, what are some likely destinations that he would go? I think it's likely that he'll go to the parallel major, as that makes sense. I think it's likely that he'll go to the flat 7 because that's a nearby key. It's likely that he'll go to the subdominant. It's also likely that he'll go to the minor dominant as well. I think those are the 3 most likely places, and anything outside of that is unusual. But I will leave you all with that insight. Thank you so much for watching the video, and thank you so much for supporting the channel. I check the analytics for the channel every once in a while, and I saw that I had 28 subscribers. Wow, this is super awesome. I'm so excited that people are actually enjoying the content enough to the point where they want to subscribe to the channel. That's super cool. Thank you so much for your support. And I really hope the videos are entertaining or informative or educational for you all. I'm doing this mostly for myself, but it's really awesome to have people along with me on the journey. So do leave suggestions for future iterations of this series in the comment section. Let me know what I can do to improve the quality of the videos. Do let me know if you have any differences of opinion in your analysis as opposed to my analysis. And let me know, just let me know anything you need me to know in the comment section. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for supporting the channel, and I hope you take care.